and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get our microphones on there, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I'm wondering, since we have parties in the office, or excuse me, in the audience that are on the agenda, if we could move those items up on the agenda so that they don't have to wait.
Who all do we have?
We have the city assessor contract people, and we have the Heritage Festival representative. So it would be council items 4A and E.
Liz, anybody else? Did you know that, Liz, anybody else here?
Coming tonight? No.
So the Hedberg situation will be represented?
No, they did not submit the necessary information.
All right. Do you know if anybody else is coming on 4A? You invited them, you hadn't heard back if anybody was coming?
They're both
Oh.
here.
Oh, they are here. All right. I didn't look up. Well, let's start with that then. Do we have any updates to the paperwork that we have? So we're going to start with council items A, city assessor contract, Anoka County, or Eric Skogquist, Mary Wells. We have agreements before us. Is there anything different than what we have in front of us, do you know, Corey?
No.
So we have a joint powers agreement between the city of Nowland and the county of Anoka. There's agreements for assessment services between the city of Nowland and Eric A. Skogquist and Mary Wells in the city of Nowland. Is 5 years, is that the standard?
We typically go 5 years just because the statute requires us to see every property once every 5 years. So if we shorten that contract period, it opens it up for having multiple people touch it within those 5 years, and it leads to potential for more parcels on lots.
Okay.
So we typically run on 5-year cycles. It also helps for staffing purposes too. If you're adding or gaining contracts over a very rapid succession, it leads to a lot of hiring and adding and subtraction of staff, because that's really what is funding the positions in those areas. So if you're hiring and letting people go and hiring people again all the time, it's more of a waste of taxpayer dollars at that point in time. Especially with, you might not be able to hire as qualified people as well, each individual time you add or gain a contract.
All right. Council have any questions for either party?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
I guess my question would be for Anoka County is, do you foresee any expenditures to the city of Nowland if we were to contract with somebody else? Is there expenditures that we could occur from Anoka County if we did contract with somebody else? That
Only in certain situations. The only situation that might, well, the potentially would be if the county's required to review every assessment. Local assessors' assessments are due as of January, December 2nd or 1st each year. That's when they used to be old paper books. They actually physically drop them off and then they get reviewed. That's when we're allowed to start that review process. Historically, Anoka County has failed on that part. From that standpoint, we've not done a very good job of reviewing the work of local assessors. That will change starting with this next 5-year cycle. We have a good plan set in place, so we're reviewing everyone's work the same. Assessment really is about equalization, so we're going to be treating our staff, local assessors, exactly the same way, with the same set of expectations. So if we review that work and it's not up to those expectations, that's when we would, potentially, if we identified any shortcomings in the assessment or areas where it's going to cause disequalization. Obviously, we want residents in the city of Nowland to be treated the same as residents in the city of St. Francis, the same as the residents in Ramsey and Oak Brook. We don't want you wouldn't want Nowland to be over-assessed or under-assessed compared to those properties. That's really what we'd be looking for there. If any of those shortcomings aren't addressed within a 30-day window, statute requires that we fix those shortcomings, and then the statute requires that we build back the jurisdiction for any of those shortcomings. I'm not saying that would be the case in this situation, but that's one potential area where the city would receive a bill.
Any other questions?
Can I just add one thing? Item number 11 on our contract states that there's a hold harmless clause. So if that were the case, we would take responsibility for those charges. Just FYI, it states that there would be no additional charges other than the per pin cost to you. So there is a clause in the contract that would cover if that did arise.
So if Anoka County did back charges for something, then you guys would take care of that?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
I have a question on that, in that I'm assuming then that Anoka County will be providing those expectations to everyone, so everybody knows what is
We're going to
expected.
provide those starting with this next assessment. So we'll issue those, and we'll provide a copy to each one of the cities and councils as well as the administrators for them to distribute, so that everyone is aware of what those requirements are. The charges, as far as like how you go about fixing those, if those aren't met, statute leaves kind of open. But it does say it's billed at time and a half. So whatever that rate would work out to be, or whatever the extent of those, is how it will work out.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
we received an email this week regarding that the Ham Lake was going to be, City of Ham Lake was going to be served by Eric and Mary for their assessment services. I was just curious if that was going to affect the pricing at all on either part.
I did check into that on our end, and it would not affect the pricing. It's based on an average appraiser cost. We don't bill on the individual appraiser working within a jurisdiction for a county contract. Obviously, if you had someone working, if you did that the other way, you could have someone who's been a long-term employee and with more experience in that city getting billed more just because of that. For that reason, yeah, if you just had to somehow change workloads, different cities would get billed different. So we do an average cost. So that really losing that one staff position would affect it greatly.
And no changes on our cost.
Or your capacity?
Correct. We still have plenty of capacity.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rickert.
question for you guys. How many contracts are you still waiting on people to get back to you as far as if they're going through the county or yourselves?
We have the city of St. Francis, Nowland, and Columbia Heights. So that totals, with Ham Lake, I know Eric had mentioned that St. Francis, it was roughly 10,000 parcels that you guys had elsewhere in the state.
Correct.
With Ham Lake, that's roughly 16,000 parcels. With Nowland, it would be adding another 2,000 or so, a little over 2,000. St. Francis would be almost 3,000, and then Columbia Heights would be another 7,300 parcels. So.
And we've actually been communicated by Columbia Heights that they are going with the county. So maybe they just haven't
organized a while, so.
Okay. So as far as Eric and I know, we're waiting on St. Francis and Bethel.
Okay. I did hear from Bethel, I think, I gotta check, hold on. We might not have heard from Bethel yet either. I was just at a meeting there 2 weeks ago, so I don't know if they made a decision or not at that meeting. So that might be it, that's only 300 parcels. So not huge.
I would just speak for a second about the capacity, just for Eric and I. We do have another gentleman that works with us. And he's more than willing to take on more of the work in the southern part of the state. So that's our plan. If we get to the point where we feel like we're, at capacity or near capacity, he will definitely take on more of the work in southern Minnesota. So, just FYI.
Any other questions? Any other comments you would like to share with us? All right. Council has enough information to make a decision on Tuesday. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
We'll make a decision on Tuesday. All right. Council items 4E. Request by the Nowland Heritage Festival to waive park and city hall reservation fees and deposits. Associated with September 22nd, 2018 Nowland Heritage Festival. Council questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Ricker?
Just two quick things. Looking at the RCA, I did notice that, and I just wanted to make it clear that, in here it says we offer free admission, parking, children's activities, historical displays, games, inflatables, and all them business, expo, musical, entertainment, fire department, open house, fireworks, and such. The fire department open house is not part of Heritage Festival. It happens to be the same day, but it is not part of the Heritage Festival. So I don't know if we want to include that. The other thing, I would request that somebody from the committee actually work directly with Captain Sacre. I believe there were some issues last year, so I want to make sure, obviously, if they're using that facility, that everything runs smooth and that Captain Sacre is aware of everything that's going on there too. So.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, may I just get clarification? You're saying Captain Sacre, so is that Mike Sushi and I just always say it wrong, or is that a different person?
Captain Sacre.
Chad Sacre is in charge of the
Okay,
station.
all right,
so.
thank you.
And I won't speak for the festival. My understanding, talking with Mike at the festival this year, I assumed the interface was Mike as well.
That's how it goes.
So if there's communication, that it's been noted that the festival will make sure that whether Captain Sacre is in there or if Bart's back or whoever's in charge of Station 3 will be communicated to by the committee.
And, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
may I ask Councilmember Rickard what the issues were, because we've not heard anything?
Well, is it germane to the council, or should it be something that they should approach Captain Sacre about?
I think it'd be probably better that route.
All right, okay.
They direct.
So let's
I just,
have
if there was questions we had to get answered by Tuesday, that would,
No, I don't think
Okay.
it needs to be,
All right.
but again, my goal obviously is so that everybody's on the same page, that everything runs smoothly.
So we will recommend that the committee get a hold of Captain Sacre and clear up anything that, from this previous year, to make sure it doesn't happen in the coming year. Anything else from the council? Seeing and hearing no questions, we'll make a decision on Tuesday. The Ms. Mueller, you're here, I'm assuming did you want to see what's going on with our, so why don't we bring up the comp plan draft that was presented, I think has a couple people excited, maybe in a positive way, maybe not. We have one letter that's not excited about it. Would you want to tell us what you thought?
I'm not excited about it.
Okay, that's two not excited. All right. So, Planner Stockman, I don't know if you want to address, we did try to make clear, one of the things we wanted to do is let people know that this is a draft to get people's feedback on if we were to expand the commercial area contiguous to where we are right now. Which direction would we go and what would the property owners think about that? So in previous years, somebody came and said, I really wanted to be part of commercial development, but I'm not contiguous. They're beyond somebody who is contiguous to the commercial property exists now. Some people didn't want to back then that want to now. And so we wanted to at least get something out there that says, do you want to or don't you? So it helps guide where we want to go as a council. I think that going across 201st doesn't appear to be, with the residential opportunities up there, it appear to be that a popular idea. At least we have two people up in that area that don't think so. I don't know that we've heard anything from anybody going down 22. But we will not be, at least I don't see us expanding anywhere near what it shows on the map. It's just, do we want to go north or west or south or a combination thereof? We had talked about potentially replacing 80 acres that moved out of commercial into residential, rural residential. And I think what it shows on the map here is closer to 400 acres. How many acres?
Well, the maps were not intended to show what might become commercial industrial in total. Those were the people, these are just strictly showing areas from which we would invite people to give feedback. And then it was intended that we would narrow down where, when and if there would be a rezoning, so.
And realistically, and we maybe didn't explain that well enough in here, we did say it shows possible expansion areas, not all land areas shown on the map will be, not all land areas shown will be amended in the 2040 land use plan. So that people that are listening to this know, and people in the audience, it's very unlikely that we're going to take about a fifth or a quarter of that and expand. Right now we're just looking at potentially replacing, if the council wants to, replacing some of the land that went from commercial to rural residential. So this is, if you're just looking at the map saying, wow, we're going from, and adding hundreds of acres, this is not all going to be added. The question was, who wants it most and who wants it least, so that we can guide it. If people down 22 say, I'm ready to develop my land, there's a good chance that's where it's going to go. If the people say, I don't want to develop my land, we're attempting to get feedback so we know that. So it really was an opportunity that the planner was instructed to reach out to people in those areas and say, what do you think? And so you're voting not in my property.
Right, and I never got no letter or information about it in the mail.
It hasn't been sent yet.
Yeah, this is for our discussion first,
Okay.
and then this will go out to those properties saying, we're going to have a workshop, we're going to have some feedback. You will have our contact information to say, please yes or please no. So it's really an opportunity to try and communicate long before anything's decided, so that we know how to guide it.
I think that's a good idea, because there's a lot of people that don't know what's going on.
Right, so if we invite them to an open house, and maybe you could help spread the word if you talk to anyone, that's when we're looking for the feedback. Because we realize it can be a, sensitive issue. So I don't believe we've met your, Miss Mueller?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I live on a Century Dairy Farm off 201st.
Sure. Okay, right, between Viking and 201st in that area there? Between,
It's Now Then
Yeah,
Boulevard, so just northwest of 201st and Now Then Boulevard.
oh, okay.
yeah. And we're
Up in
registered
there,
with
okay.
Anoka County as a Century Farm.
One of our last 2 dairy farms in Anoka County.
You're on Engen, okay.
Are you Jason?
The other letter, okay.
And when we had talked last fall, as it says in the letter, and you were very concerned about the growth of the commercial area out that direction. So when I saw this draft plan, again, we've asked the planner to get a hold of people to get feedback. Nothing's moving ahead. We're a long way from final decisions, but this is exactly what is intended, not to get people excited, but to get feedback. And when I saw your property on there, and I saw Peterson's across the road on there, didn't think anybody there was really interested in commercial or expanding it into their area. But, again, we don't want to presuppose that and say, I really moved out here so that I could develop it. I'm ready to retire and I want to do something with this land, and so I'd like to be part of the commercial development. But we do have on record, and you can bring home the information that we're not doing anything abrupt. And I won't speak for the whole council here, but I see it's very unlikely we're moving that direction. It's more likely we're moving down 22, keeping it on a more highly trafficked road.
Yeah, on that note, I'm also speaking for my sister-in-law, Kimberly Mueller, who owns land from 201st all the way down to 22. That is part of our Century Farm lot also. And we do have cattle on her land also.
And you're reiterating she's not interested in going commercial at this point either.
That's right. That's part of the Century Farm.
So we'll make note that those 3 parcels weighed in on it. And
Well, she also owns land up Brumpley west of where the farm is on 201st, between our property and his property.
Yes, okay.
And that is more like a wetland. It is farmed though. We rent that partial out, but that is also her land
Okay,
there. That,
okay,
So is the
just,
goal to get back to the 80 acres, or is there, this thing shows 400 that you guys talked about. It's not gonna be 400, is the goal 80, or is it 200, or do we know?
we don't know.
Okay.
There was some discussion that since 80 went out, 80 could come back in and be neutral. We have to take a look at what we think Now Then would look like in 2040, because this is the 2040 plan. And so what's realistic for expansion within that. So we have to evaluate the commercial that's available, and that's why we want people to weigh in. And we encourage people to come to the open houses, see draft plans. We're going to put as much out there as drafts so people can weigh in and we'll take opinions. The comprehensive plan, we really do want community input in. We try and communicate the possibilities, listen to the residents, and then represent the residents in saying this is what the city plan is going forward for the next 10-year cycle. So if the city says we've got enough commercial without replacing the 80, then that's up for discussion. If we want 100 or 200, that's up for discussion. But I don't think anybody on the council has expressed any opinion right now other than we're open to discussion with residents. And we're just saying, if we're gonna do it, we want it to be contiguous. That was one of the questions, do we want to spot zone or do anything else? We want to keep it contiguous, and right now, the area we have is filling up. What do we want to do in this area? That doesn't mean we're not going to do anything else on 47 and 22 or elsewhere in the city if the residents think it's a reasonable thing to do.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
you just need to remember too, even if it, and I'm not saying it's gonna be zone commercial, even if it was zone commercial, that doesn't stop you from farming it for the next 300 years or whatever you want. As long, you can farm it forever if you want, you and your family. It'll be taxed as a farm. As long as you farm it, it's taxed as a farm forever. It doesn't change any of that. You just would not be able to, if it was zone commercial, you would not be able to develop it as housing. That's one thing it would do. So, and I'm not saying it's gonna be commercial or should be commercial, but, you know, the park is filling up and, you know, we're starting to feel there's a need for some expansion. Where should that be? I don't know, but that's, we're throwing out areas out there to see how the neighborhood feels about it. So, but stay involved. But again, just remember, if it was zone commercial and you want to farm it, like I said, for the next hundreds of years, that's great. I'd love it. And it'll be taxed that way too.
And I think that is mentioned in the letter. We want people to know if they have a residence or a farm or something other than commercial development that currently legally exist in that area, that can continue on as long as you want it to. We've made adaptations where people that have homes in the commercial areas can expand their homes, replace their homes if they're damaged, replace that portion of it. We want to make sure that people have the choice that when it's economically reasonable to them to change from farming or residential to commercial, that makes sense. We don't want anybody forced out. So again, as Councilmember Bettinger says, if you want to make it a 2-century farm, there's nothing that would force you out at this point with a commercial designation. Not that it will be, but should it be, say on Kim's property, wouldn't force her to do anything different. But that discussion would be had. If say that people beyond there wanted to be part of it, you know, what would that do to the cattle? What would it do to other things? So again, we try and take that into consideration. We're proud of our country heritage and the fact people can still have animals out here. How do we coexist and keep the ability to farm? But, and this letter is a draft, has not gone out to anybody, even though it is, the copy we have here in front of us is addressed to your sister. We want people to understand it's possible areas. We're trying to get discussion out of it, so we're not looking at 400 acres.
So the people that live off of 47, they want commercial over there, is that correct?
There is commercial over there right now. It is designated.
Expanding over there.
That's an
Because
option as well.
people want it over there.
Yeah, and we will, again, entertain that. We have quite a, you can see in the darker area on the map there, that's all commercial designation right now. And a lot of it's being farmed, and they're not interested in developing it. There can be people outside that border that want to develop, and we certainly, as part of the workshops, want to hear from those people. If they come in and say, I really want to expand in this area here, we'll certainly take that into consideration. So if you're talking to people, and you know people in that area and said, I'd really like to get into the commercial part of this, I'm near it, but I'm not designated that, have them contact the city. We're collecting information.
Yeah, or even east of the Melvin Church and down there. I don't know who lives down that way. Is that a possibility?
Mm-hmm. You know, again, we didn't put it on this map, and Planner Stockman, we already have So it looks like we have
80
the,
acres there, that includes the church, so that next 40 to the east is already commercial. And
who owns
then,
that property?
I
Is
don't,
it Gleason's?
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then
I think they're okay
Mahutka's,
with that.
that's existing,
Then you get to Mahutka's home property,
and Gibbs.
and then Gibbs. So it's possible if Mahutka's wanted to go allow commercial, again, they wouldn't have to change anything they're doing.
I think, I don't know, but I kinda think they would be okay with it.
I think the
I
Gibbs would,
don't know for sure,
might likely too, so.
but that would be something to look into, I would think.
So from a council standpoint, you know, Planner Stockman put the little U on the west side there. Would we want her to contact east on 22 as well? I mean, obviously the cemetery's locked up a chunk of that, but the Mahutkas and Gibbs property would seem reasonable next to the Gleasons. And if there's anybody if there's any reasonable expansion on the east side at 22 and 47, does council want to see this same discussion generated? So that if we are looking at expanding commercial, we're doing it where it's most, seen as most beneficial?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rickert.
I may be wrong, but I thought based on our comp plan meeting the other day, we also opened up the option or the discussion of possibly doing something on the southwest corner
Of,
of 181st and Baugh.
oh,
But now based on this letter, it says that it must be contiguous. But I thought we had,
no, it should, what I was saying is it should be contiguous to this area. I guess I didn't realize you wanted that included on here, but it's not a bad idea if we're considering it, I guess. But the biggest discussion was which way to go from the existing industrial park. And then over by 47, there's so much more vacant land that's already zoned, commercial and industrial. I think that's why the focus was around 5 and 22.
I would think, you know, the discussion about the southwest corner, you know, we talked about, there were council members that thought it was a good idea. Would it be okay if we took that as a separate issue? Because my concern is, we may not hear what the people in the 5 and 22 and the 47 and 22 area hear, because we'd hear a loud, I'd like to have that a focused discussion. And so we could say, here's the opportunities to expand up here where people are interested and not interested, and then how much more do we need, and whether we need more, should it be somewhere non-contiguous? But start with these two areas and say, who in this area, and say it would be reasonable to, I think, to talk to the Mahutkas and the Gibbs and say, don't have to change anything you're doing, but if you're designated commercial, here's what it would mean.
yeah, I just don't want that to get lost.
Yeah, well, I don't think it'd get lost, but I think it would get clouded, this would all get clouded with the discussion there. I think that's gonna take a different bit of energy.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
the same token, I think it should be shown though too, because if you throw it in later, some people could look at it like you're trying to sneak it under the rug, you're adding it after the fact. I think we should be upfront. If you're thinking about it, show it, let them comment on it, we leave it in or we take it out, whatever, but we should be upfront and show what we are proposing out there or throwing out there for ideas.
Mr. Mayor.
Planner Stockman.
Well, I tend to agree that we would get a repeat of the previous public hearing with the whole room full, but, so let's do a for instance. What if we get, 440 acre pieces that around, let's say 5, that are interested in rezoning, and if we look at that, you know, 4 times 4, 160 acres, are we still willing to add some more down in the southwest or not? You know what I mean? I don't know. You could consider it separately, but I see.
I think the discussion in the southwest is a different discussion in that I don't think it's a need for capacity as much as an opportunity.
The need for land as much as
Yeah, and
grabbing.
if you can get some 40s up here at 5 and 47, 5 and 22 and 47 and 22, that give you capacity for industrial and commercial like we've been going back here. I think it's a different discussion down there, because I think the whole thing down there would be shot dead if it was back to 160 acres next to residential. And I think what I heard you say, and you say it, Randy and Paul at the last meeting, was you're really looking at limited to something like a gas station, like the original proposal before it blew out to 100+ acres. Or are you still talking the whole, a larger development down there?
Well, Mr. Mayor, again, what I would like to see, if we consider a property like that for some commercial, again, is come up with the whole plan of the property rather than, and the way it happened, with taking bits out and trying to, it just wasn't planned, and in my opinion, and we didn't have enough information of exactly going on, because obviously, like we talked about at the comp plan meeting, if we do zone a section there for a gas station and or liquor store or whatever, we do need to create some type of buffer. What is that? What's planned around and what's planned for residential? So there was a lot of information that we did not have at that time to vote on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of things happened quickly, when Stover's jumped in on it, and suddenly it was, full section that was being discussed, as opposed to originally 10 acres. And it was very unclear what type of buffer and what city regulations there are to address some of the major concerns people had, as far as lighting and traffic and things like that. But I still think, because of the volatility of that, it makes sense to treat the existing commercial areas separately, so that doesn't overwhelm a discussion of what's happening up here. I could see us not getting to some of the property owners up here that says, I definitely don't want this, or I definitely do want this, because all of our energy would be on that corner. And up here, we're talking about contiguous development to what they're already seeing, which is a different discussion than starting something new down in a farmland. Councilmember Rickert.
And I agree, and ideally, I think, but I agree with Councilman Bettinger too. I don't think we want to add it after the fact. I think if we're talking about adding some areas of commercial, we need to show everything that we're adding. But I do agree, in my opinion, we should almost designate, okay, this specific meeting is just to address this area.
And that's what I'm
And then
saying.
this will have a separate meeting altogether, but I think we need to let people know up front from the beginning, this is kind of what we're thinking. And so, again, it's not and cannot be perceived as, hey, we're gonna add this after the fact. It's everybody knows and aware is up front, but we obviously make everybody aware that we are having designated meetings for just specific sites.
Mr. Mayor,
Leonard Stockman.
would it be possible to do it on the same night, but just have a time period?
That's all right, Mr. Mayor.
It's possible.
That's what I was gonna suggest, is go a 6 to 9, to have each area designated an hour, and just say, to the residents, let's stay to that time frame, that it's fair for everyone, and then we can get it all discussed. But I do believe that it needs to be separate, because they are. And
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
that's fine to have them as a separate little, it's typically you have one layout and it's one open house and everybody comes as they want to. But if you want to have separate times for different areas, but I think you need to show the whole picture. Otherwise, it looks like you're baiting and switching, or you're moving things around, or depending upon who's at the meeting. Okay, I'm showing this group this, I'm showing this group that. You should show it. Everybody should see what's planned for the whole community, or what's being thrown out there for an idea. They should be showing just their neighborhood. There should be a plan for what's being thrown out there as an idea for the whole city for them to comment on. It should all be shown.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
To Councilmember Bettinger, I envision this as a memo going out saying these are the 3 areas we're gonna address. There would be 3 separate maps. From 6 to 7 will be this area, from 7 to 8 will be this area, from 8 to 9 will be this area. So everybody will get all the same information. And they know that if they live in this area, I don't have to come till 10 to 8.
Or they may want to comment.
Or they want to watch, yeah, they want to maybe stay the whole time, but they'll know that these are the 3 things that are being discussed. But it is time sensitive so that everything can get discussed. I don't think there's ever been a thought of trying to not be clear with the residents as far as what we're going to do. I would just also comment to the residents that are here is that, you know, and I don't know, maybe you've already done this, but Corey just sent out the meeting minutes from our meeting on the 30th with Met Council, and some of the members of Planning and Zoning were here. So those are I'm assuming that they are on the website. I haven't looked at the website today.
I don't think they're on the website yet.
Okay, but they will be shortly. So those are there. There's the YouTube, so you can watch the YouTube and what it.
And listen to it.
You can.
The camera was on the map the whole time.
Oh, that's right. But it's from 7 to 9:25. But in that meeting, you will hear over and over and over again, there's been no decisions, you know, this is all discussion. Watch the city website also for meeting updates. I don't know if Corey is entertained the idea or would be willing to entertain an idea to have an email list just specifically for residents that want info on it. But there'll be plenty of info and plenty of opportunities for residents to partake. And the meeting on the 30th too also gives you more background as to why we have to do what we have to do. It's not something we're taking on our own. It's something that is mandated by the Met Council. So it goes slowly and deliberately so that whatever the end product is to the benefit of the residents.
And just to note, Liz, both are example ones.
That was just the base map from the Musa area there.
Okay.
The diversified rural, that Corey caught that too. All have different labels. So this was, yeah, the maps are just showing areas from which we invited people. Again, doesn't mean that we'll be rezoning that large area. So then I guess the question is, how much land do you want to show down by 181st? And do you want to show any expansion possibilities over by 47?
Councilmember Ryan, you want to be in the commercial area?
I had this discussion 14 years ago.
The back of Joe Green's property, is that something that's been discussed before, Randy, when you guys expanded?
Well, this is my opinion, and there's nothing really taken off over there. There's no need for an expansion over there. Until we have something that starts growing over there, why would we expand it? And really, you want your commercial in the center part of your city, because if you put it out on your edges, Oak Grove could decide, you know, we're putting water and sewer in, and we'll annex that part of Nowland and take it over. That's a good tax base for us. The same thing could happen if you put a large part on the Elk River side or wherever. You want your core of your businesses in centralized location in your city.
Mr. Mayor?
For the record, Oak Grove's a long way from any sewer and water.
Well, we can't be annexed as long as we're a city. And part of the reasoning there was to abut residential against existing residential in Oak Grove, because they are developed right over the border there. At least the north of 22.
Well, probably the only, I don't know if there's, what's on the north there? Mr. Scheffler's place, is that last little bump out on the north?
Yes.
If there's anything there that people are interested, or anything more Mr. Raisler was interested in closer to his house, but I do see there's a opportunity for commercial development on the corner of 7 and Viking there. That's posted on the two south corners now for commercial and residential mix.
It's for sale, but it's not sold or there's.
No, but it's being promoted as opportunities for that there, so. I don't know if there's any interest over in that area or not.
You know, one thing about it's a large area already, and if it was to take off and one of the other property owners wanted to expand, they can request that, and can be approved easily based on it'd be contiguous with the existing area, so. I think the area that's being proposed in the area of the downtown area here is more than what we need, so I'd like to see that narrowed down, but.
You can take mine on.
Well, you know, and I think to, reasonably, anything north of 201st should come off. Why get people more riled up and say there's opportunities up there when we're really looking to, probably on your second map, moving westward on 22 would seem most reasonable. And if the parties are interested, we would know whether that's possible.
I agree with that.
You don't want to do anything on 47, and you want to present, I don't know how much you want to present down in the southwest corner is up for discussion. What do you guys want to?
I agree with that area along 22 because it's 22 is a well-built road. 201st is not. So keeping it along 22 is a great idea. As far as along down 181st, I think it should be a small narrow stretch fronting 22, 181st.
What was that?
It should be at the corner of 22 and 22, Boss Street and 181st.
You're saying fronting on 181st or on?
Fronting 181st, yeah.
Okay.
And Boss, so 10 acres, or do you?
Well, it
want
could be
to
10,
go-
or you could go, it could be 10, or it could be 20, or it should, a narrow stretch running along, fronting 181st. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go all the way to the city line to include part of Stouffer's, or I think a lot of the very west 40 though, isn't that all low?
No, not all of it, and I know he is interested. He called me recently.
You could throw it in there, and if it's a lot of opposition, you can take it out. It's easier to take it out than it is to put it back in.
Right, and again, this is just who are we gonna invite to the meeting, this isn't.
Yeah.
So really, we could show it as properties and do both the Stovers, and I don't know if you wanna do Raisler's L-shaped piece there.
I don't think I would go that much, because that would be 240s, that we'd be back to the 80 again, and I think that would be too much.
Okay. You wanna just cut it
That's what I
in
would say.
half like this?
Are you thinking 10's all the way to the city line there? So 10's all the way along
So that'd be
181st?
40, yeah, 40 acres.
Yep.
I think that's reasonable.
Who do you invite then?
It would only be.
Who would this letter, let's say it's kept as it is right now, who would this letter go to?
Well, everybody in red would get a letter, if that's the intent. So if we're gonna change areas, then we're gonna have less property owners getting a letter. So only the owners at this point to basically ask them if they're interested, that's what I understood it to be.
Bridget, is your property, Kim's property, all the way from 201st down to Viking?
Yes.
And you've got, what, about 100 acres there?
So that land, don't touch. Please.
And you're on the 40 there in the corner of 201st and
Yeah.
Nowland Boulevard?
Yeah, and then we own that up to Engen, which is a dirt road, so, you know, you don't want commercial by a dirt road on Engen.
Do you see your sisters selling it off as residential property someday, or do you?
No,
So zoning it commercial doesn't really change anything. They could farm it, like I said, for forever.
I know, I understand that point, but we don't wanna go there. You know, if like Deb Hupka wants to go there, you guys should look toward that way, on 22 going east.
All right. So what's council want to give direction to the planner as far as communicating? I think that it would be reasonable to take the properties off the draft presentation north of 201st. I think that you want to expand along 22, maybe as the second map, further west and further east,
Okay.
and let those people weigh in on it. And then council members that want it down in the southwest corner, I still think you want to separate those workshops, though they can be the same day, but separate the discussions, so they can see, everybody can see what's proposed, but they can weigh in on the things that are most near and dear to their passions. Make sense?
Yes. Sounds good.
Anything else from the council? All right, so, again, if you're talking to people, if they're interested in commercial contiguously, let them weigh in. My phone numbers are available. They can leave messages with the office as the alders did.
Yeah, so you're gonna send letters to people that own land along 22.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It'll be actually the property owners that are in the area that are highlighted.
So we won't.
It won't be everybody, it'll just be the people that are, their property is actually proposed.
Everybody's welcome to the open house.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to clarify here, so I think
But at this point,
I'm off.
your property will be off the list.
But you should,
North of north of 201st is off of that
Correct.
discussion or the, okay.
still come and stay involved.
Hey, you guys have met my wife yet, but, good thing.
Actually, she has come to a planning and zoning when the
Right,
tiny homes
Meetings, yeah.
were, and she was well behaved.
good.
She was passionate but well behaved.
She's fine. Well, does everyone here know that he applied for the planning and zoning spot?
No?
Oh, congratulations.
I have,
Yeah.
the same development goes through in Rogers, which is why we moved, or actually it's Aston Township, it's the last township that got annexed into Rogers, and, all the farmers wanted cluster development versus the RE5 that was originally designated, so our property changed substantially from a viewpoint standpoint. So, we moved.
Well, welcome.
Here we are again.
Here we are again.
Well, that's the discussion that we had when it first came up in the southwest corner. Certain people moved from Big Lake because they had a similar thing happen. They thought they were protected on the end of cul-de-sac with farmland and found out they weren't, so.
Right.
It pays to pay attention and communicate with others around. When you see the notices coming out for the workshops, we're doing this, we really want the feedback.
Well, that's why we've been, I mean, it hasn't even been a year yet, and I've been to more council meetings in this town than I think I ever was in Rogers, so. I'm trying to stay a little bit more involved.
Well, that was good.
All right,
Thanks for coming.
It may not be as entertaining as in Rogers, but
let's get a little heated too.
Does the council have any changes to the letter itself?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
the first bullet point, where it says not all land areas shown will be amended. I think that, I'd like to see that could be tweaked in some manner, because when I read shown will be amended, it's like we've already made a decision, even though it says not all land, but it's, to me, that means it leaves it to some land will be, and we haven't made that decision. We may not change anything.
Well, yeah, I guess we could just reiterate.
You know, I think to that effect, you know, no land has been designated to be changed at this point. We're trying to emphasize its discussion. Nothing's been decided. You know, saying not all, we don't know that any of the land will change.
And then, should say amended in the 2040 land use plan or on? I guess I'm thinking that should read in, but I could be wrong.
Okay. And then I thought the third bullet point, maybe I'll just add existing land uses may continue. Land is taxed on use, blah, blah, blah.
Such,
That should,
Yeah, okay. So we'll have one map, two red areas, basically. So we really don't need an area, so we'll split our meeting into 2 time periods.
The other thing is, before we get to that, in the first paragraph, the Nowland City Council is requesting your input regarding possible expansion, and then clarifying commercial, industrial land uses north, south of, and the other areas that would be suggested. I would put that in bold.
Okay.
You know, we're requesting their input.
then how do we address the last sentence, that if the commercial slash industrial and land uses are expanded, they must be contiguous? So how do you then address the 181st, because that's not contiguous to
You
anything?
could say if in commercial industrial land uses in the northern, or the adjacent to 22 are expanded, must be contiguous, because some people that are further down 22 may want to be part of it. So that way you're saying that has to be contiguous, and that doesn't require that the other be contiguous.
I'll refer to the other as a neighborhood.
Do we have a time when we're thinking about an open house, so this letter can go out complete? Liz, did you have any time you were thinking?
Well, I'm fairly open, I guess, as far as night meetings.
Well, it doesn't work for the council. I think at this point, we gotta be talking about after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think so, probably early December, don't you think? You got a work session on the 7th.
Could that be part of our work session, just start the open house early and then run it into our meeting?
I was thinking that the work session, we may want to have any final budget talks. That work session. And if we're talking about potential 2 hours.
Is there, would there be any concern of skipping into January? And that December gets very busy with different things, and just skip into January? Or is that pushing?
Does that tie you up at all, Liz? You still got plenty you're doing on the rest of it anyway, aren't you?
Well, I don't think we're in a real bind, time-wise, I mean,
People wouldn't feel rushed. I do think that depending on what people's activities are between hunting and Thanksgiving and Christmas, that they might feel rushed. So we could, do you want to pick a day in January or say in the letter that there will be a meeting in January? We can follow up.
We could pick one of the Mondays in other than the 15th.
yeah, does the 8th work, Monday the 8th, or?
Anybody got a problem with the 8th?
Without looking at my calendar, I couldn't tell you.
We already planned something for the 8th. Oh, no, we're good. I'm thinking of something else.
What did we do before phones?
Corey made 15 phone calls.
Does it work for you, Cory?
I don't know, I mean, that's so far out, I would say probably be fine. I guess the question is this a meeting or is this an open house?
Open house.
Okay, so I can be there, but what would, I mean, are we looking at typing minutes and stuff? I mean, or are you gonna, I mean, I guess I'm not really sure what you're gonna end up doing yet, but.
We want somebody there to make sure we're collecting input.
Well, we kind of talked a little bit about maybe having somebody, maybe comment cards even, or, you know, stuff like that where people can weigh in.
Yeah, because not everybody's likes getting up in front of the crowd and voicing their opinion, where it'd be nice if.
I see that kind of like open house we've had in the past where you have the maps out there and people can kind of walk around and interact, and maybe it's you make it low key, you have coffee and something to come in, say your piece, meet your council members, weigh in on, I really want this. A lot of it comes through comment cards, but they also get to meet some of their neighbors and stuff, so it really is more like an open house.
Mr. Mayor,
We'll probably still have Corey's Christmas tree up at that time, so.
we still have the silver bell. Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
if we're going to split it into, say, zones, then do we feel that this room will be sufficient? At first, we talked about if we did larger ones, we would have to go off-site. And then, so if we were going to go off to site, we would have to make sure that, I'm assuming Northern Alliance is where we would go, and that that's available. But if we are going to split it into two, would we have the ability to have it here then? And it being more informal?
Yeah, and I guess now thinking about the open house, if we keep it more informal and we don't have a room full of people that are kind of revving each other up, like the public hearing, you know what I mean? I think it'll be easier to just talk with people and get them to fill out a comment card. And it may not matter if they're from 181st or somewhere else, I don't know.
There could be a brief introduction of each item. And so that they know what is going on, what is expected of, whether it's staff, council, mayor, or audience.
Still think it makes sense to focus on, we try and focus on this area at this time. You can weigh in on either of them, but
Okay.
I just don't want the Southwest to outweigh the discussion that.
Mr. Mayor, if the letter's just gonna be specific to those properties, property owners, the 181st and that, do you really think they're gonna go tell their neighbors next door that I just got this letter and?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I do.
Well, given that it's the Stover and the people that requested for the change anyways.
Yeah, but there are people that are watching, there's people that will get minutes, and again, to Councilmember Bettinger and Rickard's comments earlier, I don't think you wanna have anything that looks like we're trying to hide anything.
Right.
And so, we know that the people in the southwest corner are gonna wanna weigh in. You know, and it was noted, because Mr. Raisler said, well, you know, there's still the comp plan amendment. People were put on notice then, keep an eye on what's going on with the comp plan amendment, because this is gonna come up again.
But my
So-
point was, is that I thought that this was just more so to ask those specific property owners if they would want to consider.
But as a public hearing, or a public meeting, I don't know that we can exclude those. We definitely wanna hear from those people.
Right.
We would wanna have a map saying, I'm this property owner right here and I'm all for it. I think that's specifically, but I think that when you look at, you know, the people behind Moritz property here, the people, on Tiger over here, they're gonna wanna weigh in too.
Then we probably would be best, if you're thinking that we're gonna have an influx of people, we might as well go over to the church, because you might be bombarded and.
I don't think so. Normally on open house, you have, you know, set maps up, you have areas, here's our zoning map, and then you have different maps, and they can make their way around their own. People stop, they come and go as they get off work or whatever. It's not, you typically don't have a formal presentation. It's just, there's maps and you have a little display there, this is what stands for, and they can come and they can do comments on each one of the maps or whatever we're proposing. So it's, the highway department does them all the time. And like I said, it typically isn't a formal presentation. It's just you come in and here's what's being proposed or what's the ideas that are being thrown out there and comment on them. And
It would probably be reasonable to have copies of the, draft of the comp plan so people know what else they can weigh in on. But this one be specifically about these areas.
And we could certainly put an open house notice in the paper.
I think we should.
Well, we should,
It
yeah.
should be for everybody, yeah. And I would prefer that it's here, because I know there's some people that feel uncomfortable with going to the church over there. So it's better to have it in a neutral area. I mean, the church is beautiful, but it's great, they have a great place to have it, but there's just some people that do not want to go over there. So let's keep it in a neutral environment. And
Could we do it 6 to 8 maybe, and then it would be more convenient for people on their way home, or not?
yeah.
I think so. So right now, Paul, did you find your calendar?
Yeah, so far it looks good.
All right.
Nothing popped up.
Okay, sounds good. Well, why don't I revise this before Tuesday and you can take one last look at it? Although I guess there's really not a rush now, for the meeting's not till January. We don't want to send it out too early. Because it'll become recycling.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
For planning item 1A, as we've not received any information from the residents, can we just take that off the agenda for?
What's the situation there?
Waiting
You're
on-
waiting to,
They were supposed to get the revised soil information and revise the survey to show the boundary of the wetland that Becky Wozni flagged. And well, last I talked to Mr. Hedberg, and he had gotten Shane Steinbrecher to move forward, and we told him, you know, last Friday basically was the deadline, so I haven't seen anything even at all this week, haven't heard anything at all. We did check the 60-day letter though, so we are good through January 11th. So if this goes to December for your decision, that would be okay.
all right. And we talked about the commercial land, park and trail. We want to, are you okay with the letter that was put together to send to the park committee? Feedback? Are we okay with that one? All right. Can we, do we want to talk about the road and bridge, the two RCA's there, so Shane can get home to his family, and we'll just pester Liz a little longer, because theirs might take a little more discussion?
Yeah, that's fine. I was gonna add a couple minor things too, so just for updates.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
At the last Road and Bridge Committee meeting, Shane did a presentation on, after driving the paved roads with Joe, and came up with the proposal that was sent out, and the Road and Bridge Committee proposed a 5-year plan for putting overlays and rebuilding the Rogers Lake area, and that's listed in the RCA, where next year was looking at a portion of Garnett, Pinnaker Estates, and 218th. So that 5-year plan has been submitted for the approval. One thing that did come up during the Road and Bridge Committee that I thought was a good idea was to kind of rework things just a little bit. It was proposed to look at doing an area on the north and an area on the south to kind of get some more visibility. So it was proposed. So I'm proposing that we take a look at it, and proposing to do Pinnaker and Krypton next year in 2018, and then moving the remainder of Garnett and 218th to 2019, and then all of Garnett would be done, and then in 2022 we would not have to do that other little part of Garnett. So instead of 317, the estimate for 2018 being 317,000, it'd be an extra additional 6,000 to be 323 for Pinnaker and Krypton.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
so what happens to Old Viking Boulevard then?
It was, Shane was basically saying that right now that it was recommended to leave Old Viking, because when we hit the 5,000, then there'd be more funds available.
So we don't do Old Viking till after 2030? After it goes back to gravel? And then the people have to pay twice as much in assessments because we did nothing with it. That makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Right now, it's a savable road, and we're gonna do nothing with it. we're gonna wait till we get state aid, which is 13, 15 years away before we start receiving dollars. It won't make it. It'll be gravel.
There were some questions that came up on the road and bridge where there was some concern that the overlay might not stick because stick with it and it would be turned into more of a rebuild. And the cost would be greater than, the overlay might not be enough to, the overlay might not be successful.
Shane?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I could maybe speak or give you some of my thoughts. I mean, Old Viking Boulevard, I think, would be a good candidate if we had enough money to do everything in our plan. And an overlay would probably make it ride better. There's a couple of things that I would be concerned with. The one thing, it just has a lot of crack filling material in that road. And I've had problems before, you know, with that, the crack filling material, when it's applied, they heat it up to about 300 degrees and it becomes a liquid, and then they place it into the crack. And so when that hot bituminous overlay is placed on it, that material becomes a liquid again. And so basically what I've experienced in the past is there's little bumps or undulations in the pavement where each crack was. You kind of see it's a little bit of a different color. And it seems like it's more of a problem with fresher rubber than it is with older rubber. But it's just something that you can't really predict if it's going to happen. It's one of the risks with overlaying a road with a lot of rubber in it. So the discussion kind of was, you know, we could think about doing that. The problem is now we're not going to do any other roads for the next maybe 2 or 3 years because that's such a large chunk of money. We're also going to possibly assess residents for a project that may not turn out well or as good as some of the other ones that don't have that same condition. And I mean, really, we have Old Viking Boulevard, we have Jasper Street, Gypsy Valley, 213th. We have a lot of roads that are starting to show their age also, and we're not doing them in this plan. And I think the Road and Bridge Committee recognized that, and you know, there was some discussion, well, maybe if we start with an overlay program and get some roads done, maybe the residents will be supportive of an increase in the levy or something to do these additional roads. Yeah, but we really don't have a good plan on how to address Old Viking Boulevard or Jasper or some of the other roads, you know, the higher traffic roads. But those roads are the roads that someday there will be a different funding mechanism. It might be too late. I agree with that. And it's really a tough decision because, you know, if you save Old Viking Boulevard, you might lose Pinnaker Lake Estates. And so it was a tough discussion, and we debated. I mean, it wasn't a half-hour meeting. We were here for a couple hours that night.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Rickard.
You know, just looking at numbers alone, you look at 2018 for the Garnett Pinnaker Estate to 18th, and now if you're saying you're going to rearrange that and change some more, where are we going to come up with 320 grand? We have 190 roughly in the road improvement fund now. If I take the total of these five years, it's $1.7 million. Where is that? And source of funding is the road improvement fund. We don't put nearly that kind of money in that fund. So how do we propose to pay for that? That's an average of $341,000 a year that we would have to put in the road and bridge fund to cover those that 5-year plan. And unless we increase the levy or assess, I don't know where the money's going to come from. You know, we put a considerable amount more than normal in that fund because we've been deficient for years.
Right.
But, you know, that's on, you know, previous councils, ourselves and stuff for not putting more sooner. But we are so far behind the 8 ball right now with what we need to do for improvements. It's just, I don't know where you can come up with that kind of money.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Bettinger.
Another thing I think you better think about is if you start doing these overlays and reconstructs, and I heard the road and bridge still 25% assessment, don't you think every gravel road in this community is gonna want their road blacktopped in too? So now you're not talking about 26 miles of road. You're talking about the whole community. Everybody's gonna want their road done. So I think that assessment policy needs to be rethought. The citizens are gonna have to pay a little more. But still, even then, there's still gonna be a lot of people gonna want their roads blacktop, which is gonna cost us even more. But Old Viking needs to be saved. I think it's a huge mistake if we let that thing go. And the people someday, when they gotta pay for a reconstruct, and they gotta pay $800,000, $1 million instead of the $540, who's gonna answer to that? Somebody's gonna have to. Because it could be overlaid today for a lot less than that. And I think the last time it was overlaid, it was just an 1.5 inch overlay that was put on that by the county back in '91. So that's lasted a long time.